Hello and welcome to the CIS YouTube channel. I'm Oliver Hartwich and I want to tell you a bit more about my new paper, A Waste of Energy. Now, last year the Gillard government finally got its carbon legislation through Parliament. So Australia is now moving towards a future where carbon emissions are priced, first through the carbon tax and later on with an emissions trading scheme. But they also introduced a new scheme on top of all of that, and that is a plan to introduce a Clean Energy Finance Corporation. Now, what is that? That's an organization that will receive $10 billion from the government over time. And the idea is that this government entity will then fund clean energies and subsidize clean energies through numerous ways. I have problems with this scheme because I think it doesn't quite work and it doesn't really fit into the whole scheme of the Gillard government's carbon legislation for a number of reasons. I think the first problem is actually that the government doesn't quite know what it really wants to achieve. Does it want to be a grant-giving body? Does it really want to subsidize industries? Does it want to pick winners? Or does it really want to provide some funding, but more on a privately commercial basis, in which case it would compete with private investors? The government is not quite clear on this, but I think what's even worse for the Clean Energy Finance Corporation is something completely different. And this is where my German background probably comes into play, because I'm quite familiar with this kind of policy. And that's a tricky thing to explain, but actually it's quite simple, because once you have an emissions trading scheme, the total amount of emissions in an economy is basically set. The government says, okay, this is the total amount of emissions, and everything that exceeds these emissions will have to be reduced, and then this emission trading scheme comes into play and people have to buy certificates and emissions are driven down to that level that the government mandated in the first place. Now, if you have an emissions trading scheme and you then start subsidizing renewable energies, you're not actually saving any emissions because the total amount of emissions is already set. So all you do is you reduce the price that polluters have to pay for their certificates in order to pollute even more. Now, that means that $10 billion we're spending on the Clean Energy Finance Corporation are really just a waste of money because they are not cutting emissions. And I said this is a German thing that appeals to me because the Germans have been doing it for about 10 years. In Germany, well, actually in the whole of the EU, they have an emissions trading scheme, but the German government has always subsidized renewable energies. They have subsidized solar power, they have subsidized wind energy, and for about 5–10 years, government advisors in Germany have always pointed out that this is a complete waste of money because the Germans were really not getting any bang for their buck. And now Australia wants to do exactly the same. After all these experiences in Europe, you must be kidding. Because actually we're having a budget problem in Australia. We're trying to get the budget back to surplus, and yet we're wasting $10 billion on a scheme with no visible effects. I think this is a waste of energy, and I think the government should actually think again. And if you like that report and if you like that idea, check it out. You'll find it on the CIS website at www.cis.org.au. And if you want to do me a personal favor, like us on Facebook, follow us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. Thank you.